Once that is downloaded, I'm just going to cancel this because I've already got it installed. So once it is downloaded, what you want to do is you want to run through the installation process. Hopefully you won't get any errors. If you do get any errors, go onto XAMPP and see if you can find any support. Follow the instructions for installation, and once you've installed, we're going to get to the point that I'm going to talk to you now in the video. So if you'd like to pause the video or close whatever, install XAMPP, and we're going to go ahead and test everything. Okay, so hopefully now you have XAMPP installed. I haven't talked to you about what we're going to do next, but what we're actually going to do is we're going to open up something called the XAMPP Control Panel application. Now, or the XAMPP Control Panel. Now, what this is it's a control panel for your services that are included with XAMPP. I'm not sure what version of XAMPP I'm running at the moment, but it is a slightly older version. So depending on when you've completed the installation, this video was recorded 2011, so depending on when you're viewing this video, your control panel may look a bit different. But nevertheless, control panel is available from your programs menu within Windows. So open this up, and what you want to do is you want to make sure Apache and MySQL are running. For most cases you're going to be using, well, for all cases you're going to be using Apache, but for some tutorials and for database usage you're going to be using MySQL. So make sure that these two are running. If they're not running, they'll look something like this. Yeah, okay, oh, so they're going to look like something like that. And to start them, you're just going to simply click start, and vice versa. If you need to stop them for any reason, just click stop. So now that they're both running, we see here Apache started port 80 and MySQL started port 3306. Now to access Apache and the files that you're going to be creating in PHP, this is pretty simple. With MySQL you're going to be using a web application called PHP admin, and this is bundled with XAMPP. Now MySQL, for a starter, is a database system. You may have heard of it. If you haven't already heard of it, go to Google, read up about it, see what it's about. You don't need to download it because obviously what we can see here is bundled with XAMPP already. So the first thing we want to do is we want to test if our web server is active. Now, you're not going to be typing any domains in here or anything else. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be typing localhost. Okay, so it's just simply localhost. So if we press enter, hopefully you'll get this screen up. So if you have got this screen up, then it's got a little congratulations message. You've successfully installed XAMPP on this server, on this system. So this will mean that XAMPP is installed. Now you can also access it using 127.0.0.1. It's entirely up to you, but I prefer localhost personally, and that's what I'm going to be using throughout my tutorials. Now you'll see at the side here you've got things like status, security, the documentation, PHP info function, which is going to give you information about your PHP installation. I do have a tutorial separate on this, so go ahead and watch that if you want to learn more. You've also got some demos here which we're not going to really be discussing. So now that we've got XAMPP successfully installed, we want to start running our own files. So we want to start creating a PHP file and running this file. So we're going to deal with that in the next part of the tutorial. This one's just about installing XAMPP. Now we need to now have a look at PHP and what PHP is the administration for your database. There are tutorials that will take you through this, so you just need to know that you can access it via this link down here, and you can see that the address is 127.0.0.1/phpMyAdmin, or as we looked at before, localhost/phpMyAdmin. Okay, so that works as well. So hopefully now you've got XAMPP up and running. The next tutorial in the series is going to talk you through how to create your file and where we're going to find the place to put our file to make it accessible through our now local web server. So we're going to be looking at creating a file in the next tutorial and displaying it with the localhost address. Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org and back with another video for the New Boston. Now in this tutorial we are going to go on from our previous tutorial where we installed XAMPP for Windows. Now that we're at this stage where we've installed installed XAMPP, we've accessed localhost, we've tested that PHP works, so we've run our MySQL databases for when we look at databases a lot later on, and we've also brought to attention the XAMPP control panel here, which allows us to start and stop particular services. And the services that we've focused on are Apache and MySQL, because these are two that we're going to use most frequently. Okay, so now this tutorial is basically going to cover how to create your first PHP file, and we're going to do some little bit of output in it, nothing major because we have other tutorials explaining output and the PHP info function as well. So have a look at the other tutorials and you'll find some great information on that. Okay, so let's go ahead and we need to think about opening up this folder here. Let me just bring it into view. This folder here called XAMPP, and this is at c:\xampp by default. Depending on how you installed your XAMPP installation, depending on how you ran the installation, this might be different, but by default it's c:\xampp or whatever drive you've installed it to. So replace this with your drive letter. Okay, so in here we've got a few folders you can see, some of which are useful to us, some of which are not. We have our PHP installation folder, which contains all our DLLs, php.ini, so let's find that. We've got php.ini here, etc, etc. So there's another tutorial on php.ini, so go and check that out. Okay, so htdocs is the folder that I want to focus on in this tutorial because we're going to be creating our first file. Now inside htdocs, at the moment it's a bit of a mess for me, I've got a few files in here, but we want to create our PHP file in here. So let's just open up our browser. So you know now that we access our website from, or our local server from localhost. Now we don't need to do localhost /htdocs/ and our file, because htdocs here, in here is where is the root directory, if you like, for where our file should be. So let's go ahead here and I'll create a new text document, and I'm going to call this my first file.php. Now in Windows I have extension naming enabled, so I can automatically name my extension, but if you can't do it this way, you can see I've got, if you change a file name extension, blah blah blah, click yes, and that's changed now to a PHP file. Now this C icon you see is my text editor, my default text editor, and my default text editor is context. So usually, you might have Notepad as your default text editor, but I recommend, if you're going to start learning PHP, download a good text editor. I use Context. I've always used Context and I prefer it. However, some people prefer to use Notepad++ or even just Notepad. And I mean, there are many out there that you can use, depending on what platform you're in as well. You might be running a Linux system, so you may have different text editors available to you. So I've created this file like this. Now what you can do is, let's delete that, and let's go over to my text editor. So I've got my text editor open here. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to save this. I'm going to go save as, and I'm in my htdocs folder here. So I'm going to type my first file.php, and then down here I'm going to save as type all files to make sure that the extension's read. Now watch what happens to this just up here, this text files bit here, when I click save. So let's get this into view as well. I'm going to click save, and you can see that's automatically changed syntax highlighting for my file. So if now the PHP extension is applied, we can see that file's been created there for us. The extension has been applied, and now syntax highlighting has been turned on. Now syntax highlighting, if you've ever programmed before, you'll know, highlights specific parts of the syntax, so constructors, variables, string data and integers, things like that. Just everything will be highlighted differently depending on how your text editor handles that, and you can modify that as well from options menus. But we're not here to talk about that, we're here to talk about the first PHP file. Now inside our PHP file, Let's just actually go to our browser first and try and access this. So we know this is saved in c:\\examp and htdocs. So let's go ahead to our browser and type in myfirstfile.php. So remember, htdocs is the root folder, so all we need to do is say localhost /myfirstfile.php. We press enter and this file has been loaded in. Now, because it's a PHP extension, you might think that you can't put HTML data in, but we can in fact write data into here and just either plain text or HTML, and when we refresh, that's displayed on the page. So you can see now that we're accessing our files like we would on a normal server. And again, you can create folders, directories in here, and create things as you wish. So to create the first PHP file, we've done this, and our tags look like this. You'll notice that we have a less than sign, a question mark, PHP, and then we end on a question mark in here. So that's very similar to how we open up and close HTML. So we open up tags like that and end tags like that. In PHP we do this, but that's not what this tutorial is about. We've created our file, we've accessed it from our web server, and now you can go on to the tutorials where we talk about echoing out data to the user and so on and so forth, and you can start your journey learning PHP.
Hello, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, and this is a video tutorial for the new Boston. Now, in this video tutorial, we're going to get to grips with the basics of creating a PHP file, what extension we're going to give it, and how we're going to set up the inside of the file to ensure that our web server deals with it correctly. Because PHP isn't part of our web server package, we may need to specify in Apache to look out for PHP files, and you can do this in your http.conf file that we've already looked at when we've set up our Apache installation. Now, PHP is server-side, so whatever you write in between PHP tags will not be able to be viewed by people. Usually, when you create an HTML document, you'd start with your HTML tags. You'd obviously do it much more correctly than this, but you'd start with your HTML tags. You'd create your body tags, and different information and different functionality of the page will go in different places. Now, in PHP, it's a lot more loosely structured, and the way we do things is we use PHP tags. Now, on their own, PHP tags look like this. So you can see that it is it's a mirror image of a less than sign first of all, then a greater than sign at the end here. In between are these question marks, and then just the words PHP. It can also be specified like this. Now, this might look a bit odd to you at first. However, what we actually do is just after PHP here, we come down and everything we want to write in PHP goes in here. So every time you set up a new page and you want to include some level of PHP in it, for example, you can combine PHP and HTML in a page. We could have our PHP tags here, and we could also have our HTML tags down here. So whenever you start up a new page and you're going to include PHP, you want to create a tags like that or like that. I'd probably recommend the use of the PHP notation at the start. So these are your PHP tags. PHP code will go inside here. So how do we go about saving our file so it can be interpreted properly by our web browser, or our web server, So we go ahead and we save the file. Now, I have a folder inside my htdocs folder called series, and this is where the videos, or the code for the videos for the whole series, will go. I've created a particular folder here called first file. So this is how we're going to access it in our web browser. We're going to go to localhost, series, first file, and then we're going to have our file name here. So let's just call this document, let's say, we'll call it index.php, because typically an Apache installation will take an index.php and index.html files as default files to be loaded inside a folder. And by that, I mean if your file is named anything else, so I'm going to call this just for file.php for now. Remember, we're using .php. You can, just to be sure, choose all files here and enclose that in double quotation marks, just to make sure your text editor saves it with a correct file extension. So let's save this. We've shown that we've saved this as a PHP document. My text editor context has automatically turned on syntax highlighting for PHP. This just means that PHP code and different aspects of code will be highlighted so we can read things easier. For example, variables are green and function names are typically a grey colour, and things like keywords, so for example for each, which is a language construct, are blue. And it depends, so strings can be brown, for etc, etc. So we've got this file and we've saved that. Now if we come in here and refresh our browser, you can see that the file appears here. Now if I click on this, that's our PHP document ready to go. We can start programming and we can start displaying output to the user and calculating. And as you can see, if you've clicked to view the page source, there's nothing there. So let's combine some HTML with PHP and see what happens. And you can see now that by just including some HTML tags and refreshing the page, you can see that these actually show up. However, our PHP code will be up here. However, it won't be shown because it's interpreted by our web server program. That's where everything's sort of calculated, and then we display the output that we want using PHP. So it's a server-side scripting language as opposed to HTML, which is just tags that are interpreted by different browsers. Okay, so like I said earlier, you can name your file and give it a specific file name, or you can choose to name it index.php. So I'm going to start up some PHP tags and I'm going to save this as index.php. Now this is in this directory if we go back, so when I refresh, index.php will automatically be opened. We won't have this index of /series /first file. We won't be able to see the files. We'll just be presented with the index.php page. And to test this, I'm going to use a simple command in PHP to demonstrate this. I'm going to say echo, and this is my output. There's a tutorial on echo and what it does, or you'll see what it does, but how it works and a bit more information about it. So for now, I'm just going to be outputting this to the screen. So let's refresh the page. You can see that we've automatically gone to index.php. My browser doesn't show it up here, but let's just type that in manually so we can definitely see. So the page, it's automatically gone to index.php. If I just choose to go to the file, the folder I mean, is exactly the same. So these are different conventions of naming files. If you name something anything else other than what's specified, index.php and index.html I think are default specified in an Apache configuration. However, normal files are not named to open by default. So that's a bit about naming files and how you should name and create your files. And you've learned also how to set your PHP tags up ready to code inside them.